Welcome to the Bibles and Beer Show with your host, me, Ronnie McKenzie of Southern Roots Almost Famous Woodshop, and my boy Jason Souls. You can find me on Instagram at Southern Roots CW and Jason at JSouls81. You can also find the show at Bibles and Beer Show. We're just a couple of normal, patriotic Christian guys that love our country, love Jesus, and love beer. There's enough politics and religion out there, so we're not that. We're just out here trying to erase the bad stigma of Christians drinking beer. Beer's gotten a bad rap from people destroying their lives and abusing it. Biblically, beer isn't wrong, and we'll back that up if we need to. Hang out, pop a top, and let's talk about life. So one thing you spoke about quite a bit was anxiety. That's something that, I think a lot of people, especially young people nowadays, with all the caffeine and energy drinks and all this stuff, that affects their bodies. But I deal with anxiety. I didn't when I wrestled or played football. So for me to think of you with the accolades that you have as a wrestler, dealing with anxiety, for one, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to imagine you walking out on a mat and being worried. But I get it, because you never know what that other person's bringing to the mat. What advice would you give to a kid that has anxiety about wanting to join competitive sports? And as a second part as well, how important do you think those sports are for that?
Well, it's like I'm diagnosed high anxiety, and it's probably gotten worse from my head injuries over the years. But you don't get you can medicate anxiety, which is not a good idea. But you have to manage it, and you have to learn to manage it, and you've got to figure out your tricks. There were times I read books during tournaments. I wouldn't watch matches because I'd just get anxious. So I'd read a book and get into that. Or, I had a kid that used to, he'd listen to wedding music. And I'm like, it's like wedding music? And how do you get pumped up on wedding music, coach? That was a good point. And so when about 3 matches before, he'd change the music over to something else, and he'd be ready to go. And so he'd listen to, I don't even know what wedding music is these days, but that's how he dealt with it. But so you're never going to get rid of anxiety. You can mitigate it. You can, you have your stress management skills. And so doing with wrestling, I figured out ways that I could deal with that. But my anxiety was, it wasn't so much losing, it was what would be said after I lost. I'm supposed to win this match, and if I don't win this match, so you had the pain of expectation, and so I used to overtrain for just because it relieved my anxiety a little bit. And when I got to college and I was not doing as well as I thought, my anxiety told me that I sucked. I was not that good. And then when I hit college and I was losing some matches, because in high school, I think I lost 2 matches total. And all the other matches I lost, I was in 8th grade. Before that, so I didn't lose anything.
Yeah. Your record shows you lost 1 in high school.
Yeah, well, I lost another match at the Sunshine Open in Florida to a guy named Sam Anacana, who actually wrestled Ray Lewis in the state finals in Florida.
So when I said 117-1,
technically that was GHSA, all GHSA, which is Georgia High School.
So that one, and you said you'd only lost 1 other, so that's including. So you've only lost 2 matches in all
through high school.
From the time you started wrestling.
Mm-hmm. In high school. In high school.
Right.
So as a 9th grader till senior.
Yeah. So all the
junior, all the international, everything. I only lost 2 matches. And
so you could be like 567-2.
I honestly, we've never really looked at all the other matches with, you know, because I mean, at junior nationals, I'd wrestle 18 or 19 matches for that tournament.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of.
Coach, that is absolutely breathtaking.
You're humble.
Yeah,
and I
very
get it.
humble. Because
I get it. That's
117-1. That is extremely remarkable. And then when you're talking about you've only lost 2 matches total out of every tournament when you were in high school that you wrestled, man, that is wild.
I appreciate it. Well, and it just made it even worse when I started leaving in college.
No, I mean,
Cadet, man, yeah, Coach, you have to be probably one of the most humble people I've ever met. Mm-hmm. I'll say that.
I was telling my wife that. I said he's humble.
Yeah,
I've watched a couple interviews online with you, and then preparing for this and to get information, so I knew kind of the direction to go with some questions, but I don't think I realized it was that.
Wow.
117-1. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
We
but I didn't realize that was.
Yeah, that was just high school, just the season between, you know, November and February.
And you wrestled year round.
Yeah. Wow. So then you can imagine when I finally had college, you know, because my anxiety told me
and I'm
that
sure
I sucked.
Anxiety went up.
Yes.
Because you weren't used to.
Well, I was the number one. I was the number one recruit coming out, and so it was brutal. And
well, you had a couple friends that were at college with you, and they took off, right? So then you felt like your life was even more upside down.
Yeah. The reason I went to West Virginia University was, one, my brother was there, and then Nate Carr, who was a bronze medalist in the Olympics in Seoul in '88. Which he got completely shafted. He should have been a gold medalist. And then Dominic Black, who should have been our Olympian in 2000, he just had a brain fart and didn't do what he should have. I mean, he was the best guy.
Yeah.
And then Dean Morrison, who was the NCAA champ at 177 pounds in '94. They were all three there. My older brother was there, and so I went, and then Nate, Dominic, and Dean were all gone within a year and a half of me getting up there. And which I had some good teammates, you know, but I didn't have a heavyweight coach that I needed, and I didn't find what I needed to find to be successful. And, you know, part of my anxiety is that, you know, I always thought I was not good enough. I thought I was just kind of, I'd figured out some things and I was beating some people, but eventually they were going to figure me out. Yeah. And when I hit college, they figured me out. And so it looking back now, it's like, oh, you should have done this, and you should have done this, and you should have done this. And I didn't do those things. And I couldn't think myself out of my anxiety to do that. Looking back, and when I see the kids dealing with anxiety, I feel I deal with them better than I was dealt with through coaching. I got sent to sports psychologists. I got, you know, you name it. But it just, you know, it just didn't, it never settled. And then, you know, and just as I've gotten older, I still have the same anxiety. You know, it's why I get up to school at 4 o'clock in the morning. I know I've forgotten something. I know I have something not taken care of, so I've got to be there in order to take care of it. I would have never guessed
it, because you're such a laid-back, relaxed person.
Yeah. I've seen you on the side, you know, during, you know, tournaments and stuff, and even, you know, big matches or final matches or whatever, and you still look like, you know, it's just another day at the office. And with me, you know, being a dad, I get invested in every match, no matter if it's my kid or, you know, another kid, or, you know, a kid that I've, you know, that's friends with my kid or whatever. I get invested in it, and I'm the dad that's hanging over the rail, you know, yelling and screaming that people are kind of looking at kind of weird. And you look like when you coach, you're just, you know, it's another day at the office, easy going. You know, you'll give them a, you know, whatever they're doing. You obviously you're yelling out, but you look like
you're in your zone.
Yeah, you're in your zone, and I guess it's that duck in the water type thing, where on the surface they look so calm, and underneath, well, their legs are just a kicking.
Well, you got to be their call. I mean, if you're freaking out in the corner, then, I mean, what are you going to do?
That's probably where I screwed up. The first 2 years I did it because I was the one freaking out in the corner.
Yeah, you got to be there calm, but and the more irritated I get, the more I'll just get quiet, because if they really aren't listening to me, or they're not, why am I yelling? So at least that practices. If when I'm finally really fed up with something, I'm just going to sit on the side and just sit quietly, because I'm going to say something I might have to apologize about, and I don't want to do that. So it's just easier just to sit quietly and not do say anything. But in the corners, you got to be there calm, and you're the first face next to probably their mother or their father they're going to talk to after that match. And so, they're going to take a lot of it from your initial reaction. And my father was always great about it. I mean, I might get chewed out about something later that I needed to be chewed out about, but the initial right off the bat, it was always, a good thing. So that them walking away, it needs to be a positive thought that they're walking away from, and before they go see their mother or their father, and so I wanted to be that. You look for the positive, and they're, it doesn't mean I'm not going to come back and be like, all right, now I'm going to tell you about this crap that I'm really, really upset about. Yeah. But getting upset, I wrestle the match inside. I'm usually contorting myself as I'm going through it. But again, I'm trying to be calm enough to where they're going to listen, and they're not going to take more energy from me or anxiety from what I'm doing.
Well, let's take a break, and then we'll wrap this up with a couple more questions. So we were just talking about, your wrestling career and your high school record and all, and Jason and I are sitting here still trying to comprehend all of that.
Yeah, wrapping my mind around.
Yeah. Did you continue wrestling after college?
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
In the tournament, actually, where I wrestled Chael's son, and I wrestled him in quarters. I wrestled a Marine in the semis who ended up in the national finals the next year. I got thrown off a mat, and I broke my neck again for the third time, which I didn't realize. But I had an injury default out of the mat, and I had so many problems after that I had always just assumed it was my shoulders, and they did a nerve test and figured out it was my neck that had been causing all my shoulder problems all those years. And so I competed through the senior nationals in Vegas, and I got injured, which I thought was a shoulder. And so I defaulted to 8th, so I was an All-American. But then after going through all the testing, which they take a needle and they stick it from your finger all the way up to your neck, and about every inch or so that they stick the needle in and they twist it. Mm-hmm. And they're doing nerve tests, they got all the little electrodes on you and whatnot, and they're checking nerve tests, and they do it all the way back up through your neck.
And you're asleep, right?
No, wide awake. And you can hear it almost sounds like a Geiger counter as they're twisting this thing.
I think I may have peed my pants a little bit.
Yeah, it was miserable. And from that, they could figure out that it was my neck that was causing all my problems.
He took from the tip of your finger all the way up to your neck.
Couldn't we have started up here? Could we have started up here and went?
Yeah, could we have done it for everybody?
I was like, yeah.
That wasn't even the worst.
That was it.
After they said they figured that, they were going to check some things, and I mean, I had to do a dye test. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And so what they finally came up with is I was either going to have my neck fused, or I was going to have to retire from wrestling. And if I fused my neck, we were 2 years out from the next Olympics. I want to say it was 2002. That would put me back about 6 months before the Olympics. So I was going to try to get in shape and train and be ready to try to make the Olympic team, after that, or I could retire and not have the neck surgery and just, be done. And it was,
which is pretty much the most pro you can go in wrestling, right?
Yes.
Is the Olympics.
And, and then to not start a career, not start a family, not go home, to try to rehab for 2 years and then come back and maybe or maybe not make the Olympic team. It was kind of one of those things, I had to check my ego. I had to really just sit down and soul search on it. And I finally decided, it was probably time to retire, which, I even still had issues with that because, when you stress about things and with especially with wrestling, like I did through college, and I always tell the kids about the golden injury. You want that golden injury, hey, I would have done this, but my knee got blown out, so I couldn't do it, and so even though I was really upset that my knee got blown out, I'm not so upset about my knee because, it's my good excuse for not having done what I was supposed to do. And, and you always, oh man, why couldn't I get that? Why couldn't I get this injury? And so then when I finally did get an injury that put me out, did I cut a little early? Could I have fought through that? Could I have done, and I've struggled with dealing with that decision over years, but it was the smart thing to do. I mean,
Coach, if you don't mind me asking, and you cannot answer it if you don't want to, I completely understand. Your entire wrestling time that you did, and take into account of your injuries and your setbacks and your I want to say failures, but not much failures on the mat, but the hard times that you went through and stuff. Is there anything about your wrestling career that you would say you want to change?
No, I won't answer that. I'm just kidding.
I'd be cool with it.
No regrets.
No. In the moment, I would have, yes, absolutely. There were things absolutely I would have changed. If anything,
I know that maybe I didn't answer it right. I know that there would be times when you say, I wish I'd have pushed a little harder at this practice or whatever. I'm talking about everything that you put yourself through. Would you have changed any of that for where you're at now?
No, I'm. Do I have regrets on stuff? Yeah. I mean, I wish things were different, but I my wife and I talk about it all the time. If things had been different, I wouldn't have met her.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the 3 kids that I got.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have ended up here, and I love living up here.
You wouldn't have some pretty awesome neighbors.
Absolutely correct. Wait, who?
Oh, I'm there.
No, I mean, I'm completely content at where I'm in my life, and it would have been cool to have the things that I dream about, but then I wouldn't have met my wife or the kids, and so, with the things that have changed, I wish I would have understood and prioritized things differently when I was in the situations. I didn't give a less effort. I had the wrong mindset. I had the wrong confidence. I had the wrong, all of those things, which, that now makes me a better coach because I try to connect with kids on the, hey, I know what you're thinking here. This is where you're at. This is what you got to get through, and this is what you got to do different. And maybe they listen, maybe they don't, but at least they have that opportunity. They can understand that whatever situation you feel really lonely in, you're not the first one to be there. You're not the only one there. And I wish I had that. My father provided that for me in high school. I didn't have that after that. And I didn't realize he was such a good coach. I didn't realize how important a coach was. Being a stupid kid, you're arrogant. You think I figured this out myself. I didn't figure it out myself. My father put me in this situation enough times. I finally learned the lesson. Yeah. Because I wouldn't listen to him. But I wish I had the big vision that I have now, being older. Not the small vision that I had then that was wrong. And if I did, I think things would have been different, or at least I would have known how to attack it better, which would have helped my anxiety tremendously. But where I'm at in life and what I've done and what's going on, I'm completely content with. I'm very happy with.
Yeah, I sit there and think sometimes that look back and say, man, if I'd have taken this one chance, or if I'd have done this, or if I'd have just signed up for this one more deployment, or if I'd have done this and that, then I look back and think, just like you did, well, if I'd have done that, I would have never met my wife. I would have never had the great life I have now, the great kids I have now, and the peace that I have now in my life. And I definitely can respect that.
One thing I'd like for you to think back and reminisce on is one of your greatest achievements, both as a wrestler and as a coach. And I'm going to let you think about that a minute, because we've talked about the importance of sports for kids and young people, and how it was important in your life. And we've talked about, as a parent, watching your child wrestle and all, and play sports. But I want to kind of rotate that around, and as that athlete and as that coach watching these kids develop, what is a memory that you think of, whether that be a kid that you taught that was never exposed to wrestling?
As a coach, it would be great to say, oh, I got this state title, I got this state. I mean, what kind of legacy is that?
Right.
You can be a complete turd and be a state championship coach. The thing that I always loved was to get a kid to do something that they never thought in a million years that they were going to be able to do. And I've had multiple, I couldn't pick just one kid that I got to sit there and watch that on. And you talked about dads living vicariously. It is the best feeling to be sitting there looking at a kid in the face, knowing that they know that they just did something that they never thought they could ever do.
Yeah.
And you get to be a part of that. And you know that kid's going to remember that for the rest of their life, and you're smack dab in the middle of that memory. And it's a great feeling. And I've had multiple wrestlers have that happen. And it's sad that, a lot of times that happens, and it's just a little footnote in a tournament or something that nobody else really noticed. But that is a huge event for that kid, and it's a huge event for you to be there, and you want it to be bigger for him, but you got to be a part of that, and that's something that's huge for me. Like my memory as an athlete. There are several things that I've won that I really worked hard for and that I really focused on, but the biggest thing I remember coming through high school is my sophomore year at junior nationals. My brother had been an All-American multiple times, had done really well. And I remember I was coming through the tournament, and I was losing multiple matches. I was ranked, in Greco, I was ranked number one, and freestyle was ranked, I was ranked number one, in freestyle I was ranked 3 in Greco. And I was coming through the tournament, and I was losing multiple matches by points, and I would come back and win by 1, and just pushing through. And I'm a sophomore. I wasn't supposed to, I was ranked, but nobody expected me to actually do anything. I mean, nobody had done anything, from Georgia since my brother. And I was pushing through, I was fighting, and I finally won the last match to decide I would go to the finals. I was going to be in the junior national finals. And I remember my dad had just had his first heart attack. He was 49. And they were very careful about putting him in the corner because they didn't want to get him too excited. And he was in the corner, and Steve Day kept sitting on his lap trying to get him to calm down and sit down and stop being so excited. And match was over, and then I went to go talk to him, and my Dennis Strami, who was the coach at Parkview for my older brother, who's also a Hall of Fame coach, he stopped me from grabbing my dad because my dad teared up after the match, and he had to walk off for a second. My dad doesn't cry about it. I mean, doesn't, and I remember that whatever I'd done had got my dad that emotional, and I still get teared up thinking about it. But he had to take a couple seconds, and then he came back and came to talk to me. But to just know that my dad got that emotional about something that I had done, was something that was pretty awesome. It kind of beat anything I won or
That's awesome.
anything I accomplished.
Man, I tell you, you've been there in several of them moments for both of my older two's lives and kids that they stepped out on the mat and you're like, there ain't no way they're fixing to beat this kid, and then they beat them, and they're like, and the look on their face, and of course it's nowhere near the scale that you're talking about, but the look on their little faces, it's like they, in the first place they look, if they look in the stand, they look at me and they're like, did you see that? And one kid that I remember, Caleb beating, he was such an athletic looking kid, and it was when he got out on the mat, and this was, I think, Caleb's first open tournament, I think, and this kid was a monster, and we were at 12 and under, I think.
Yeah.
And this kid was a monster, and this kid had been annihilating kids all day, wrestled, 3 weight classes, and Caleb gets out there and beats him, and he gets up, and because when Caleb's walking out there, because looking at the bracket, he's coming.
Yep.
And Caleb is just thinking the whole time, of kind of strategizing what I need to do, and all I could tell him is go as hard and as fast as you can go. And if you lose doing that,
we're all good.
Yeah, we're all good. Yeah. And he does it, and he beats the kid. And the look on his little face is like, and he's like, as the ref's like holding his hand up, he's looking at me and pointing, going, like, did you see that? And it's like
the best feeling to sit there and watch that happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, man,
and then realize what they're capable of.
Yes.
All the losses that he may have taken,
Yeah.
all up leading to that one match, and I think that match actually got in 3rd place, I think, and it was like, wow. And then, and Will, he stepped out on another kid, and the kid just looked like there ain't no
Chiseled.
way that my kid's beating this kid. And he throws a head on him, something that he has failed on the entire season, and he throws a head and grabs him and pins him with it, and he gets up and kind of, Will kind of pumps his chest a little bit, and you're like, wow. That to me makes all the early mornings, and it makes it worth it to see them little bitty moments right there of just saying.
Because they will remember that moment for the rest of their lives. They'll tell it one day to their kids, and you got to sit there and be a part of it and see it and know, it's just.
And as a parent, I know what you mean by that feeling, but I could only imagine as a coach, knowing that you've been there before, and then to see them get that same experience, you're like, that's.
I don't want to drop names, but I remember watching a video. I think it was your first year here. One of the kids won his 3rd state title or 2nd state title.
On Lumpkin's team.
Yeah.
Nolan was going for his 3rd, and Sam was going for his 2nd.
Sam, and I remember when he won it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I saw the video, but someone had the video, and he won it. He runs up in the stands and hugs his mom.
Yep.
And I was like, how awesome! How awesome is that? This kid is a legitimate pound for pound baddest dude, and Georgia State 3A, and he runs up there and hugs his mom.
Yeah.
And little things like that is what I always say that just makes everything you do worth it. Just in parents.
Yeah.
And I could imagine in coaches, you got a whole team of that. You see that even the things that we don't get to see as far as practices, where a kid may have beat a kid at practice and stuff. And I could imagine just the little fulfillments that you get every day of doing that.
Well, and hopefully a coach is aware enough to see those things. If you know everybody on your team and you see the struggles and the accomplishments and the goals and the obstacles they're overcoming. As a coach, I get to know everybody on our team. I don't know everybody and can tell you a little bit about everybody on our team because I want to be a part of that. And partially selfish because I want to be a part when they finally hit that thing. I get to be a part of that memory. You know? And is that living vicariously? I don't know, but I feel pretty damn good after that happens.
As a coach, I don't mind if you live vicariously that way.
I was just going to say,
You do that all
if you want to call it vicariously, man, you can call it however you want to.
You know, but
A
again,
parent in the stands that needs to be quiet and just let their kid do their thing.
Are you talking about me now?
No. But we won't drop names. But like as a coach, you do that all you want to.
yeah,
You do that all you want.
it's exciting and you know.
Oh, here's the call I've been waiting on. So, hang on just a second. So, you gave a little story earlier about Randy Couture.
Mm-hmm.
Got him on the phone.
You do not.
He wants to wrestle you. And no, I'm just kidding. No, so tell us that story about Randy.
I didn't see a little sweat pop up in your head.
He's like,
No, I'm hoping that luckily he might be as crippled as I am right now.
he's on
He might have a chance.
He is.
Let's not wrestle, coach.
Well, Randy Couture he was in my weight class, and he'd been pounding people for years before I even, had switched over to Greco, and he was out at the Olympic Training Center. He had missed out on the world team, and I'm pretty sure he got screwed. They had gone to go to arbitration over the match, and he lost out. And but he was the alternate for the world team, and he didn't give anything less than 100%, and he was there. And this is back when the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Challenge, which it stands for the Ultimate Fighting Challenge because they were trying to pit different styles against each other. Wrestler versus Taekwondo or kickboxing versus.
And it was a full night tournament.
Yes, you
It wasn't just a single match.
three
Yeah.
fights to win.
Yeah.
And a lot of wrestlers had been winning the tournament, and so they were kind of shying away from the wrestlers and kept bumping them on the wait list, and putting them out. And so one of the guys that was supposed to be in the tournament got hurt training, and so they started going down the wait list to who they were going to get, and Randy was like 8th on the wait list, but he was in shape. He was getting ready for the Worlds, and so when they hit him, it was like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah, all right. And so he went out and won the whole thing, and I was at the training at the time. I was at a training camp, and Randy Couture just won the UFC.
Yeah.
And I see him walk into the practice room, and it was kind of like, he was an intimidating looking dude as it was, even way back then. And he sat down next to me on the bench, and we're putting on our shoes, and I finally looked over him. I said, Randy, didn't you just win the UFC? And he was like, yeah. And he finished tying his shoe, and he walked out on the mat and started practicing. And I was like, all right, cool.
Like, no big deal.
No big deal.
You're thinking he's got someplace better to be, and he's like, yeah, got to get out on the mat.
I tell that story that I heard Emmett Smith tell time and time again. I think it was after their 92 Super Bowl win. A reporter walks into the locker room to interview Jimmy Johnson, and Emmett Smith is in the weight room, and it's 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and he's lifting weights, and he stops and he says, "Didn't y'all just win the Super Bowl yesterday?" And he says, "Well, yeah, but next season started today." And I'm like, man, this guy just I can't remember if that was the year. I think he was Super Bowl MVP that year.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, and I hate to kind of give him accolades because he's a Florida guy, but after that he went to Cowboys. So.
Yeah, but it's that competitor mentality.
Well, there's a very similar story for Dan Gable when was it Munich? Munich, he had a busted knee, and he won the gold medal. I don't think he had anybody score on him, and my dad knows who the roommate was, but whoever his roommate was, he celebrated after, and I guess Gable was getting up the next morning, and I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He said, "I'm going running, getting ready for next year." And with a busted knee, having just finished for a gold medal, put on his shoes. He got back out and started jogging, started running.
Yeah, and a lot of that, you hear some people give the cop out of, I don't want to overtrain, or I don't want to do this, and you hear a story like that, and you're like, what is overtraining, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not one to talk, because, you know, I'm fat and out of shape, but you hear stories like that, and you're like, gosh, man, you know, the part where somebody just digs down deep in that little bitty dark box, that's there and says, I have that much more, or I have to go that much harder. I listen to a lot of books because I drive a lot, and I always listen to a lot of military books. And you hear books, and I've listened to probably just about every book written by a Navy SEAL out there. You know, they have some of the coolest books out there when they talk about their training and stuff, and you hear the things that they go to, and after, you know, buds or their training is over, then you hear the stories of the deployments and stuff they do, and they always say, well, that's why buds, or, you know, their basic SEAL school is so hard, because this is what really happens in real life. And it's like, you know, they reach down in that little bitty black box that they have, and they say, I have that much more to give, or like in you know, with Dan Gable's case, where he's like, I don't have time to quit. You know, I have there's someone out there looking to take my title, or, you know, take a shot at me. And, you know, Caleb goes to the gym with me in the mornings, and I pick at him a lot because I do 3 to 4 sets of 10 reps of everything I do, and I do that because I'm fat, and I need more of the
you're in the burn.
So when he'll sham and he'll do, you know, 6 reps or something, and I'll say, well, that wasn't 10, and he'll say, but Dad, and I'll say, that kid you're going to wrestle for the state title, he did 10 reps. Or that kid that you're going to be across from on the offensive line, he did 10 reps. Yeah. And I always say that to kind of push him through, you know, and I don't want to sound like I'm that tough on my kid, because I idolize him getting up with me going, and at least he's there doing something. But I always try to keep that in his mind, saying, hey, there's always someone willing to go that much further to get whatever goal they want to get. And, you know, hearing stories like that, it's like, wow. You posted a story of and I don't remember word for word, but a kid that was wrestling for the college national championships with a broke finger, and his finger was sideways or something, and coach said, no, you need to sit out, and he takes his finger and straightens it back out and tapes it up and goes and wins the national championship.
No, actually, this is it was actually his jaw.
Woo! Okay, I got that wrong.
Oh God, I can't think of his name right now. He was Ohio State.
Wow.
He was a MMA fighter. Kevin Randleman.
Randleman, that's it.
That's what I was about
Randleman.
to say.
Yes.
Yep.
He, in the semis, he fractured, broke his jaw and dislocated it. And the guy who's wrestling, he was beating the hell out of him. And of course, this guy's like, yeah, you know, he thinks he's got it. And they said he walked over to the mat, and he slams his face onto the mat and resets his jaw back in.
Holy crap.
And then walks back out on the mat to wrestle. And they said you could look at the other guy's face. It was just like
instantly beat.
Yeah. Like,
so he
this
ended up.
dude's gonna eat me.
He went into the NCAA finals with his jaw wired shut.
Oh my God.
And it's the mat. It's up on a stage, you know, and everybody's running up the steps and whatnot. And they said he walked up. I mean, he's right next to the stage and jumps, standing leap onto the stage like it was like he was a Jedi, and it just floated up and landed on it and walked out. And then he beat the hell out of the guy that was out there.
Oh my God, man.
But yeah,
His jaw.
broke his jaw and dislocated it, reset it, and went out and finished the match. Yes, Randleman. And I think he's dead now, but just a beast, just an absolute beast. Broken, dislocated. That guy was positive he was going to have to injury default. He reset that, walked back out, and finished the match. And
those dudes, like, it's instant defeat.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm good, thanks.
you know, there's a lot of
Randleman popped his jaw back into place without medical assistance and continued the match and dropped fresh on.
You know, that's a lot of flack that, like, Conor McGregor gets. But that's all. That's why he does what he does, is to get that mental beat into people.
Oh yeah. He's not really that way.
No.
See, I couldn't stand him when he came on the scene because I was like, somebody just needs to knock him out.
He come from a very, very humble background. Homeless.
He came from some crap.
Yeah. And he is not that way. He's a very smart business guy. He knows how to sell tickets. But he does what he does simply for that. Simply the mental factor of when he beat Jose Aldo. I remember watching an interview of somebody that was in Aldo's camp inside the locker room. They were warming up, and Conor was absolutely like, there were rooms like next to each other, and Conor was absolutely just tearing the mat up, yelling and screaming. And they said every time you heard him hit the pad, you could see Jose's face get
kind of twitch and
down and down. And not saying nothing against Jose. I mean, he's a hell of a fighter himself.
Hell of a fighter, yeah.
But just little things like that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I hate to get down a rabbit hole.
No, you're good.
Let's do a real quick the funny stories. I know we got a couple, but there's one in particular that I really wanted to hear, and it's the Brock Lesnar story. Would you mind telling me? I think that is. And I know you told me that before, so I know it. But,
I had to go heavyweight eventually because around that time they started the weight assessment, and I was cutting from like 225 to make 90. And the weight assessment, they tested your body fat, they tested your hydration, and you had to be at 5% body fat, hydrated at the weight class.
And you went from 190 to 197 to heavyweight, right?
Yeah, well, I was 225 cutting to 190, which I could do. Because I would get down to about 205, 210.
Right now.
I'm 315, wanting to cut down to 270. We have to talk later, Coach. Give us a point.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, if as long as you're not cutting 25% of your body weight, you're not really cutting into your electrolytes bad, and eventually your body stops bouncing so much. So, I was 225 in the off season. I get down to about 200, 205, and then eventually I was not bouncing so hard to make 190. But then, it was about the time that creatine came out. And so guys were cutting weight with creatine in their system, and we had multiple guys that killed themselves doing it. So they developed the weight assessment, and there was no way at all that I was making 190. So I had to go to heavyweight, but I was still only about 220, 225. And I went to Nationals. That was the year I went at Penn State. And I had Brock Lesnar the first round. Which right after the match they asked me I had a drug test. I was like, all right. I was like, and she's like, yeah, I understand. You're right. So had him the first match, and he had a good double. He shot, and I knew that if I could just, if I could get him to settle down, he would get tired a little bit, because big muscles, big gas tank, you're gonna need it. And he shot in, and I straight elbowed him in the face, and he kind of shocked when it happened, and he stood up, and then, like you would pick up a little cousin by their rib cage, underneath their arms, and hold them up in the air. That's exactly what he did to me. And I remember when he did it, I put both of my hands on his shoulders, and my fingers didn't reach the entire ball of his shoulder, as I did this. And I looked over at my coach in the corner, and all he can do is just shrug at me.
Go for the
and
ride.
I kind of wanted to give him the finger, but I was like, thanks, And then he picked me up, and then he just threw me. Like you just throw a ball or whatever. And he threw me away, and I landed, and I remember I landed right next to the boundary as he's running at me. And so I wasn't afraid or nervous. I knew I was obviously taken down. But, it's no big deal. I wasn't in any danger. I could just go out of bounds. And when he hit me, he grabbed me by the back of my neck and one of my knees, behind one of my knees, and he pulled me so hard backwards. Like a baby, that I turned, and I actually grabbed the edge of the mat. And then I realized what I did, because you can't do that. And I let go immediately, and then he pulled me right back in the mat. I'm face down, but I felt so powerless and like such a rag doll that so.
Did you win?
No.
It's crazy. You see Brock, and you see him on TV. Obviously I have never met him, but you see him on TV and you follow him in his UFC career and stuff. And if you ever YouTube video him, when his amateur wrestling days, I mean, just he looks absolutely massive. And to hear you tell a story like that, it just puts that way in perspective of the difference in just a superior athlete like you are, and then just absolutely phenom. And it's crazy to hear.
Yeah, and to hear you talk with the records you have and the awards you've won, and to think of him just grabbing you and you're just clawing at the mat and throwing you
trying to push the foundation of a building.
Yeah,
that's how far you were getting with trying to push him around. It was not happening very easily.
Now I've heard a lot of people talk about Brock, but I listened to Joe Rogan one time mention that it's like, if you've ever thought about the way a bullfighter is in an arena with a bull, he said that is the perspective of an average person in Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
Just sheer absolute power.
I saw behind the scenes when he was preparing for one of his UFC fights, and they showed his training and everything, and then they go to the restaurant and he gets like 2 or 3 of these burgers, and I don't know, they were at least half-pound patties and 2 or 3 patties on each burger. You remember this?
Yeah, he's sopping it in ketchup.
And he's sopping it, and he said, I have to take in this many calories because of how large I am.
You can't keep
the muscle
mass,
requires that much food, that many calories.
We think about that as like, oh man, that would be awesome to eat 3 big burgers like that, dude.
Yeah.
When you're training like he is, it's not fun.
Yeah, and that's
It's
what he
not
said. He said,
enjoyable.
I don't even want it.
Dude, it's like, this sucks. I don't want this other burger.
But
he's got to
forced
keep
to.
all those things. I mean, it's miserable.
Yeah.
His muscle mass, and I'm not a nutritionist or a physical trainer, nothing like that, but I just know a little bit. His muscle mass, his muscles, as massive as he is, he burns probably 3 to 4 times the calories that a normal person with just his muscles working. Mm-hmm. And on top of the intense training that he does, I mean, his training sessions, he probably burns, this is a little exaggerated, he probably burns 5,000 calories an hour. And he's got to keep, when he's weighing in at 265, he wants to keep close to that 265 because he don't want to drop down to 225.
Well, and understand this. Yeah. When I wrestled him in college, he was cutting from 320 to 285.
And you were at 225.
Yes, I was at 225. I look like a prom date.
So I remember who it was now. So I watched the video of the Big Show. Paul Wright was talking about wrestlers, and he said by far, Brock Lesnar was the most athletic, agile wrestler he's ever faced in his life. And when you think of someone because he probably walks around with 320 maybe, 290, 320, and just can move like a cat.
Well, like the gainer he used to do off the side, the buckle. Yeah. I was told the WWE's insurance company would not allow anybody over 185 pounds to do that. But he got a special permission, whatever, because he had to sit there and do it in front of one of their adjusters and show that he could do it. And at 300 pounds, he could do this gainer off the buckle well enough and comfortable enough that this guy was like, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, the insurance adjuster for a multi-billion-dollar company saying, yeah, you're cool, dude. Yeah. I can't even do it off my dollar.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And he would do this, and that's how he almost broke his neck, from doing that. But, I mean, say what you want on how he got that big or what he did. He was an incredible athlete. And then you look at, he's our age. Yeah. He's 46, 47 years old. Crazy. And he's still doing that crap. And the WWE, eventually one of these days he's going to pay for it. Yeah. But right now he's still pushing through.
I watched one of his workouts, just his warm-up. And I'm like, his warm-up is probably equivalent to 3 of my days in the gym. I mean, he does the weirdest. And I tried to do it one time. He takes broomsticks and puts it in the corner of a room, like a 90-degree corner, and he puts both broomsticks together and he pulls them out and he stretches his shoulders out like he's doing a push up with a broomstick. And I tried to do that, and I think that's what tore my labrum in my right shoulder, because there's no way. I got out and I couldn't get back up. I mean, you just.
I lost sight in one of my eyes doing that.
I may have stroked out. Somebody had a problem with AD.
I can't spell anymore, you know.
One thing I want to ask
this.
real quick before we leave. Are you frightened any when I come to be, if I come community coach, are you ready for another heavyweight?
Oh, I'd love some. Hey,
cool with it?
many hands make light work, man.
That's what I'm talking
We're the
about.
mafia. We bring everybody in, you know.
Are we going to be able to practice a little first?
Nah, not unless it's going to solve nuclear war or world hunger.
All right, yeah. Okay, so I'll stick with letting the kids play around. Coach, we really do appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
and it's such an honor to be able to talk to someone with your accolades and everything you've done, and just kind of get down to earth of your just down to earth perspective on everything, and we appreciate everything you do and everything you do for our kids and everything you do for the community, and we just can't thank you enough.
And your humbleness, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed myself. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for listening, and you can catch us on the next podcast. You can find us on any of the major podcast platforms, and you can find us on YouTube at Bibles and Beer. So, thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Tonight's verse is from James chapter 1, and it's verses 2 through 4. It says, Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know, when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing.